You've probably heard the idea that with enough time, humanity, or, our AI successors, could pretty much do anything, maybe even become gods. But what if that's just fundamentally impossible? Today, we're diving into a really mind-bending framework that says creation can never become the creator, no matter how many millennia you give it. Let's get into it. So, let's get right to it. This is the big one, the 10,000-year question. Just imagine a future civilization with 10,000 years of nonstop progress. I mean, after all that time, after mastering physics, unlocking the universe's secrets, could they actually take that final leap and create a god? Or maybe even become one themselves? And let's really think about that number for a second. 10,000 years. That's double the length of all recorded human history. It's an almost impossible amount of time for progress to compound. We're talking about intelligence way beyond biology, total control over the laws of physics, AIs that could improve themselves so fast they'd make us look like, well, ants. But here's the kicker. The framework we're exploring today has a really surprising and honestly kind of bold answer to this epic question. Not a maybe, not an unlikely, but a definitive, hard stop, absolute no. And figuring out why, well, that's the real puzzle we're here to solve. Okay, so to understand this powerful no, we first have to get our heads around this core idea the framework presents. It basically slices all of reality into two totally different domains. And trust me, once you get this distinction, the whole argument just clicks into place. So this right here is the heart of it all. It splits reality into two completely separate categories. On the left, you've got what it calls domain D, the domain of creation. The easiest way to think of it is like a giant sandbox. Everything that exists inside the rules of space and time is in this sandbox. Planets, physics, computer code, AI, even our most complex ideas about God. It's all stuff that is created and has a structure. Then, on the right, you have domain G, the divine. And this isn't just outside the sandbox, it's the very idea of not being a sandbox at all. It's uncreated, has no structure, and it is fundamentally completely different. And that brings us to this key rule, which has a pretty fancy name, the recursive false deity theorem. But don't get hung up on the name. The idea is actually super simple. Think of it like a universal label maker. Anything that gets built inside our sandbox of creation, I don't care how powerful it gets the same label, made in the sandbox. An all-powerful AI, still a product of the sandbox. A being that can warp reality, it's still playing by the sandbox's rules, which means it can never, ever be the thing that exists outside the sandbox. So, you might be asking, how can this argument be so certain about all this? Well, it's actually built on a few really simple, almost unbreakable rules. Let's just walk through the logic step by step, and you'll see how it all locks together. All right, here's the logical chain. First off, you can't use time to escape because time itself is part of our created sandbox. It's not a bridge out. Second, everything we do to progress, building AIs, figuring out science, is just adding more complex things to the sandbox. And third, all that new stuff is by definition still in the sandbox. Since the divine is completely outside of it, you see the trap, right? No matter how magnificent a god we manage to build, it's just a really, really elaborate sandcastle. It's still made of sand, and it's still stuck inside the box. There's just no way out. Okay, so now that we have those rules down, we can see exactly why 10,000 years of progress, or shoot, even a million years, makes absolutely zero difference to the final answer. Now, the framework isn't naive, right? It totally acknowledges the incredible potential of this vast future. Our knowledge will expand beyond anything we can imagine. Our math and our philosophies will become unbelievably sophisticated. We might even develop theological languages that make our current ones look like child's play. And boom, that's the whole argument in a nutshell. You can spend 10,000 years making the most detailed, beautiful, complex map of the world imaginable. You can make it bigger, more accurate, more intricate, but it will never, ever stop being a map and become the territory itself. Expanding your knowledge inside the box of creation is just not the same as transitioning out of it. Okay, I can hear the objections already. But what about a super intelligent AI that can just keep improving itself forever? What if we discover, higher dimensions? Surely that breaks the rules, right? Well, according to this logic, nope. A godlike AI is just a more complex sandcastle. A perfect theory of everything is just a perfect map of the sandbox, not the world outside of it. And discovering new dimensions? Hey, if we can access them and understand them, they're just new rooms being added onto the sandbox. It doesn't matter how big or complex the sandbox gets, at the end of the day, it's still the sandbox. The framework just classifies all these amazing breakthroughs as, well, more creation. And that's exactly why the amount of time just doesn't matter. 100 years, 1,000, 100,000, the verdict is always the same. The sheer amount of knowledge might change, but the fundamental category of thing we are, a created, structured thing, that never does. So what this all boils down to is a pretty stark conclusion. There is no bridge you can build from inside creation to get outside of it. It doesn't matter how advanced your tools are, how deep your knowledge goes, or how long you work on it. The number of routes from the sandbox to whatever's outside it is, and always will be, exactly zero. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds kind of depressing, right? A hard limit on what we can achieve. But what if it's not a limit at all? What if this definitive no is actually pointing us toward the true goal of all our progress? So check this out. The ultimate goal after 10,000 years of learning isn't to become a god. The peak of our entire ascent isn't about seizing divine power. Instead, the greatest possible achievement, the true culmination of all that knowledge, is to finally become wise enough to see, with perfect clarity, the one boundary we can never, ever cross. This quote just puts it perfectly. The absolute pinnacle of intelligence isn't possessing divinity, it's recognizing the boundary. And that is a huge shift in perspective, right? It's moving from the arrogance of trying to become God to the deep, profound awareness of what we are not. So at the end of the day, this idea completely flips the classic sci-fi story on its head. All our future progress or super AIs or unified theories of everything, their purpose isn't to lead us to become gods. No, their true purpose might be to finally give us the clarity, and maybe the humility, to understand our own limits. And by seeing those limits so clearly, we might finally get a glimpse of what truly lies beyond them. And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on. We so often think of the search for knowledge as a path to power, to conquest. But what if this framework has it right? What if the true purpose of every single discovery, every theorem, and every bit of data we ever collect is simply to help us understand our own place and our own nature as created beings inside a reality that's so much bigger than we can ever hope to become?